It was the kind of night that seemed innocent enough. The bar was dimly lit, the sound of glasses clinking echoed off the walls, and the air was heavy with the musky scent of leather seats and whiskey. I sat across from her at a small table near the window, watching the lights of the city twinkle outside. Her smile was radiant, and her laugh, light and melodic, had a way of making everything feel just a bit more bearable. I had met Nora a few months earlier at a mutual friend's party. At first, it was casual, we exchanged pleasantries, talked about music, books, and life in general. But after a few weeks of texting and shared moments, it became clear that there was something more, something electric, between us. It wasn't love, at least not yet, but it felt like the start of something. Our dates became more frequent, and our conversations deeper. Nora was captivating, and every time we spent together felt like an escape from the monotony of daily life. I began to find myself thinking about her more than I cared to admit. The spark was undeniable, and I knew, somewhere in the back of my mind, that this was a relationship that was building towards something bigger. Then, it all came crashing down. I had received a text from Nora one evening, suggesting we meet at a different place. It was a part of town I wasn't familiar with, a quieter area with more secluded cafes and bistros. At first, I thought it was a bit odd, but I went along with it. I didn't want to overthink it. As I arrived, I could see her already sitting at a corner table, scrolling through her phone. She waved me over with a warm smile, and I felt my heart skip a beat, but something was off that night. As we talked, I noticed she was distracted. Her eyes darted nervously around the room. The lively chatter of the cafe seemed to fade into the background as my mind began to piece things together. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she wasn't telling me. She was a terrible liar, I'd calm. As we talked, I noticed she was distracted. Her eyes darted nervously around the room. The lively chatter of the cafe seemed to fade into the background as my mind began to piece things together. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she wasn't telling me. She was a terrible liar, I'd come to learn. And in that moment, I saw through her facade. Something about her mannerisms was different. She was avoiding eye contact more than usual, and the stories she'd shared about her life felt off, disjointed, inconsistent. My gut began to churn with doubt. I decided to take the plunge, hoping that I was just being paranoid. "Nora," I said, my voice steady but laced with concern. "Is there something you need to tell me?" She froze, her hand trembling slightly as she put her glass down on the table. I could see her thoughts racing behind her eyes. The confident, self-assured woman I had spent weeks with seemed to shrink before my eyes, replaced by someone unsure, nervous, almost guilty. "There's something I should have told you earlier," she began, her voice small. "I didn't want to hurt you, I really didn't." I leaned in, my heart pounding. "What is it?" "I'm married," she whispered, barely audible. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. It was as if the ground beneath me suddenly disappeared, and I was left hanging in the air. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My thoughts raced. All the late-night messages, the phone calls, the sweet gestures, the plans for the future, everything we had shared suddenly felt like a cruel illusion. "You're married?" I repeated, trying to make sense of it all. The words tasted bitter on my tongue. "Yes," she replied, her eyes welling with tears. "I've been married for 3 years. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought we could just enjoy what we had without complicating things." Anger and disbelief surged within me. How could she have hidden something so important? Was everything we shared a lie? Had I just been some kind of distraction for her, a temporary escape from the reality of her life? My mind spun in circles, desperately trying to process the magnitude of what she had just confessed. "Who is he?" I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady. "His name is Mark. He's a good man. But we've grown apart. I don't know how to explain it." Her voice trembled, and I could see the guilt in her eyes. A part of me wanted to feel sorry for her, to understand her predicament, but the other part of me, the part that had been led to believe in her honesty, her openness, was furious. I stood up from the table, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I can't do this," I said, my voice a mix of anger and sadness. "I can't be a part of this. You've lied to me, Nora. You've lied to both of us." She reached for my arm, but I shrugged her off, not wanting to hear any more. I couldn't understand why she thought she could get away with this. How long had she planned to keep up the charade? "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "I never meant for this to happen. I care about you. Please, don't leave me." I could feel the weight of her desperation pressing against me, but the betrayal I felt was stronger. I couldn't believe I was standing there, having this conversation with her. It felt surreal. She had pulled me into her web, and now I was caught between a love that wasn't real and the anger I felt for being deceived. "I've already made my decision," I said, shaking my head. "Goodbye, Nora." I walked out of the cafe, the cold night air hitting me like a slap in the face. As I made my way down the quiet street, I felt the weight of the betrayal settle in my chest. Every memory of her, every kiss, every laugh now felt tainted. I wasn't just hurt, I was humiliated. The next few days passed in a blur. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages from Nora, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. I had made my decision. I couldn't go back to her. Not after everything. I felt like I had been living in a fantasy, and now the veil had been ripped away, leaving me to face the harsh reality of her deception. But then, on the fourth day after our encounter, I received another message, one that wasn't from Nora, it was from her husband. I stared at the message for a long time, my mind racing. How had he found out? Was he confronting me? I didn't know what to expect, but I opened the message anyway. "Hey, I'm Mark. I know what's been going on. I think it's time we talk." I took a deep breath. This wasn't going to be easy. But I owed it to him to tell him everything, even if it hurt. After all, it wasn't just Nora who had been living a lie, he had been living one too. I called him that afternoon. His voice was calm, but I could sense the hurt in it. He had known for a while that something wasn't right with Nora, but he hadn't suspected her involvement with me. We spent the next few hours talking, with me detailing every interaction I had had with Nora. It wasn't easy, and it didn't feel good, but I had to do it. I couldn't let her drag us both into her web of lies. "Do you love her?" Mark asked suddenly, his voice breaking through the tension. The question hit me like a freight train. Do I love her? I wanted to scream yes, but the truth was that everything I thought I knew about Nora had been an illusion. Could I still love someone who had betrayed me so completely? Could I still care for a woman who had lied to my face, who had stolen pieces of my heart only to hand them to someone else? "I don't know," I whispered, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "I never wanted to hurt you," Mark said softly. "I don't want to destroy her. I don't know how to fix this." "We can't fix this," I said, my voice cold. "She's broken us both. You deserve better, Mark. You both do." The call ended, and I sat in silence, my mind reeling. As much as I had hoped this would bring me some form of closure, it only made things worse. I felt guilty for being involved, guilty for having fallen for someone who wasn't who she claimed to be. But the hardest part was yet to come. The following evening, I received a knock on my door. It was Nora. Her eyes were red, her face streaked with tears, and she looked like a shell of the woman I had once admired. She was standing in front of me, trembling, and for a moment, I wanted to pull her into my arms, to forgive her and pretend none of this had ever happened. But I knew better. "I never meant for things to get this far," she whispered. "I don't know what I was thinking. I'm so sorry." I took a step back, shaking my head. "Nora, please. Don't come here. Don't do this. I just want you to understand," she continued, her voice pleading. "I thought I could fix my marriage, and then I met you, and you made me feel alive again. I thought I thought we could have something real. But we don't have anything real, I said, my voice hard. You're married, and I'm not going to be a part of your lies. Not anymore. The silence between us was deafening. I could see her breaking before me, but there was no way to save her. The damage had been done, and I was too far gone to turn back. I'll leave, she said quietly. But I'll never forget you. As she turned and walked away, I felt something inside me snap. It wasn't just the relationship that was over, it was the trust, the illusions, the love that had been built on a lie. I had been caught in the web of someone else's deceit, and I would never let myself be that vulnerable again. The door closed behind her, and I was left alone in the silence of my apartment, wondering how I had allowed myself to be so blind to the truth.